All right, everybody, let's get into it. A very special guest, the head coach for the University of North Carolina women's basketball team, Courtney Banghart. They call it the University of National Championships. Coach, I cannot wait to get into it with you. Everybody, this is a special guest. Courtney was named Fortune Magazine 2015, one of the world's 50 greatest leaders. So we're going to get into that. The 2015 Naismith National Coach of the Year, and transforms programs, organizations, communities, wherever she goes. I can't wait to get into it, Coach. Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp.
I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
So, Coach, one of the things that always impresses me about outstanding leaders, and you certainly are one, is the ability of great leaders to essentially push the limits of what groups of people think is possible. You know, you did it at Princeton, no question. You're going to continue doing it in Chapel Hill. Why are you able to push the limits of what people think is possible?
I think it starts with just a genuine and authentic belief. You know, I think people are superpower. I mean, they just really are. And it's, for me, it's finding a way to be not only a crutch when needed, but a pusher and a servant from below when needed. You know, I think the unique part of being a coach is or a leader of any kind really, is you've got a juxtaposition of issues. One is you've got to help people grow beyond their comfortable limits. And growth is really hard and uncomfortable and naked at times, right? And then the other side of it is you want to really provide a positive experience for your student athletes. Those two things are often in opposition, right? Because one is really hard and brings out some of the hard emotions of growth. And two is the other is just the fun and the experience of being a student athlete. And so we web that kind of daily, minute to minute. But I think it all starts and stops with just the general belief I have in the ability of humans to do just masterful things.
Where does that belief come from? Is that something that you've always believed in, or is there a moment in your life when you said, wow, people are capable of amazing things, especially when they put their mind to it?
I think honestly, it came at that really naturally. I think I've just been really impressed by people all across my journey. I'm from a small town in Amherst, New Hampshire. And so, you know, when you're from a small town, you sort of see people grow from, you know, first grade all the way through. And you think about your leaders and teachers and all that. You see them in the grocery store, you see them as actual humans. And so just seeing the people's potential and see that be realized. And then I've been on so many sports teams and watching that sometimes a simple word or an acknowledgement or a celebration or a direct, hard conversation, all those things put together push people forward. And, you know, my strengths are what they are, my weaknesses are what they are, and yours are what they are. And that's what makes us unique. And as a leader, my job is to accentuate our strengths and slowly build or hide the weaknesses.
How do you help someone who doesn't see what their potential is, see their potential?
Well, it's usually one of two reasons, one of which is they have a fear of failure. And so sometimes you don't push as hard or go or care as much or be as loud because you're afraid you might not reach it, right? And that one is probably very common in the people that I've coached, right? And the other is the fear of missing out on an opportunity. And so for me, when I got the Princeton job, I had only been an assistant coach for 4 years. And many of my peers said, gosh, if you're not successful, that's career suicide, right? If you're only 29, you're the second youngest coach in Division I at the time. And I sort of said, what's my other option, right? My other option is to not take it. And then I got to live with that regret and that potential of what could have been. And so I'm more driven to the opportunity side, but I coach a lot of people that are afraid of failure. And I just try to shift it to the other option is to not have the opportunity to strive or opportunity for highest success. And so I try to change that mindset to opportunistic rather than a potential failure.
When you think back to that decision about, you know, do I take the Princeton job and it potentially doesn't work out, or do I stay where I am? Did you feel as though you had stopped growing where you were and that was an opportunity to really push the envelope for you?
I think that was more the case when I took the Carolina job. So again, we were winning, 25 games a year. I really built something that was kind of in autopilot in a way. The locker room was strong and they were kind of coaching each other and recruiting each other. And I had built a lot of connections. People had trusted the work I had done. The institution really valued my work. And it was really fit with my mentality as an educator. And so I was really happy there. I was there for 12 years, which is a long time. And I got there were a lot of jobs I turned down, and there was just something about the University of North Carolina that I felt, as you said, the University of National Champions, a very top-notch academic institution in a community with a giant global brand. I mean, it crossed off so many boxes that I said, there's no other way, right? And people were saying, gosh, you win 25 games a year. You've got job security at one institution, and you're going to go and be really exposed. And again, I go back to it. What is the other option? Is to stay where you're comfortable, or think about your life in chapters. And for me, I love the option of chapters and the growth that brings, and even the hard days. It's hard to get past hard is a famous line that I've said my whole life. It's hard to get past hard, and in that hard is where I'm really growing and I'm really living. So it was a big move. It was a hard decision to make because of the people that I had invested in me and I invested in. But I haven't looked back. It's been a great place for me to be.
So at Princeton, you have the 30-0 season, perfect. So I always ask coaches, do you coach to perfection? How do you look at perfection as a coach?
I think perfection is a noun, right? And leadership is a verb. So no, I typically don't. With that team, I think what made that team special outside of it was well put together in terms of the skill sets that we had, and we were able to score, we were able to run, we had good size, all the things basketball wise. But we were well led. I think we did a good job with our internal leadership to help our team recognize that we were never too good and we were never good enough. Right. And that's a weird balance to try to create. So when we got to 20-0 and 21-0 and 22-0, the media really logged onto it. And we had media every day for a half hour before practice. And literally, you name it, the newspapers and TV were there every day. And we just sort of, with that came a ton of pressure. And I just kind of met it head on with it. Like, guys, we're not good enough yet because we haven't gone to the NCAA tournament yet. We haven't finished our season. So we're not good enough, but yet we're also, we're not too good. We're not too good. Here's film to prove it. And so I think sometimes just staying all the time, staying in the moment, is where perfection is. And for us, our moment was a long season of doing a lot of things right.
I talked last summer to Coach Mary Wise. She's a 15-time SEC Coach of the Year volleyball coach at the University of Florida. And she told me that perfection is really just being your best at any given moment. So can you get a little bit better these next couple minutes? Can you get a little better the next couple minutes? You can't coach to perfection. The best you can do is coach to getting a little bit better in each moment. And I think there's some of what you're saying there, right, is that you're never good enough, right? There's even a perfect season from a record standpoint. There's quarters that could have been better. There's plays that could have gone better. There's always stuff that can be worked on.
Yeah, I think in sports, it's so easy to have the external world determine your value, right? And so who's determining what's perfect, right? And so I always try to stay true to the group I'm in. And, are we empathetic enough? Are we good enough teammates? Are we getting better as a group? Are we getting better individually? What's that learning curve look like? How are we handling adversity? Those are all things that contribute to it, but perfection is an external noun put upon a group. And so we had a perfect season, right? And it was like perfect. 30-0, the best record, men or women, the highest ranked team in Ivy League history, men or women, blah, blah, blah. And I just looked to those kids in the locker room and said, gosh, we're a really good team. We have a lot of good individuals that have created themselves into a good team. So yeah, I'm probably I have to say, I'm so focused, Andrew, on the opportunity. Like I said, that the opportunity that we have in this life to both make an impact and leave a legacy. I'm just so driven to that every minute with my group. And so I don't really get caught up on what the external world determines to be our value.
And you talked earlier about, creating a well-rounded experience for the student athlete, and that a large part of that is academics. And you've had some great stops academically. Undergrad at Dartmouth, majored in neuroscience. Your master's degree, you studied writing and leadership. It's interesting to think about those two, right? A lot of coaching is science, and a lot of coaching is communication. When you think about your work in the master's work at Dartmouth, how do you think about the two, the science versus the communication? You're I mean, there's no question you're a fantastic communicator.
Well, it's also analytical, right? I think we ask our kids to step out of their comfort zone every single day. As a leader, you ask your people to do that, your staff and players. And, for me, going to Dartmouth as an undergrad and studying neuroscience, I was out of my comfort zone every day, right? And I remember I walked out of my English class because I was like, yikes, this is really not a material I'm interested in. And so damn if I didn't go get my master's in English. It's like you just have to, you have to lead by example. Right. And I've pushed myself outside of my comfort limits a lot. And I hope that my players and my staff can see that and therefore find some strength in that. And I'm not asking them to do something that I wouldn't do. But tangibly, what the science has taught me in college and really in high school and just in general, what science is really data driven. So it's really analytical. It forces you to really, things don't just happen. There's a hypothesis and a test and data. Right. And then on the writing side, you can always manipulate words and realities to fit a construct. Right. And so it absolutely leadership for me. I'm with coaching my team. I'm very data driven and I'm very communication driven. And so I think looking at both of those things side by side constantly allows me to have some substance to all my relationships.
You talked about leading by example there. And this show is called Everybody Pulls the Tarp. It's based upon a philosophy that I have that great teams, great organizations are powered by individuals who contribute in unexpected ways. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to an internship that I had 18 years ago, the first internship that I had. It was actually not far down the road from Princeton University. I was working in minor league baseball for the AA affiliate of the New York Yankees called the Trenton Thunder. And I show up for my first day as an intern. I think I'm going to learn the business of sports. And they say, Andrew, it's great to have you here. Tomorrow, bring a pair of old clothes, put them in the locker room. You're going to help the grounds crew pull the tarp on and off the field when it rains. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm going to help. Isn't that why we have a grounds crew? And they say, well, yeah, except the Yankees have a grounds crew that's 3 times the size, 3 times the budget. Everybody in the minor leagues is going to help pull the tarp, from the CEO to the head of marketing to you, Andrew, the new intern. And I pulled the tarp on and off the field a ton that summer. I also drove players to the airport. I drove their spouses back to the condo. I blew up moon bounces. I helped park cars. I did whatever was needed in the moment. Didn't matter what was my job description. And as I have gone on in my career and I reflect on that, it was one of the best career experiences ever, because it taught me that there was no task above me, there was no task beneath me, and that my job in the moment was to do not what my job description maybe said, but what the team needed. Whatever the organization needed. So I've kind of gone on this journey throughout my whole career of looking for what I call these tarp pullers, these tarp pulling moments, these people who are doing anything, whether it's glamorous or unglamorous, to do what it takes. And I'm curious, as you think about your coaching career and leading by example, some of the things that you do that maybe set the tone for those around you that may not be expected of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of what I had said previously. I think you shouldn't ask people to do things that you're not willing to do. And they can be really tangible about, clean up the bench before you run out to the, I don't go to the media. I don't leave my cups around when I'm on press conferences and things like that. Or something more meaningful about, like I said, putting yourself outside your comfort limit so that you could ask your players to do that authentically as well. Or the way I make people feel welcome. I always say that when you're in our gym, if you walk into our gym and there's somebody in there, they're our guest, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So if I'm the 3rd one in the gym or the 5th one in the gym, and I ask you, who is that? And you say you don't know, that would be a problem. Because what were you doing before I got here to introduce yourself to someone who happens to be sharing our space, right? And so I think sometimes it's also, or oftentimes it's how you treat other people. The world flows through people, right? Opportunities and experiences flow through people. And how you treat others has to be something that starts from the leader, and the people see how I, not just in easy times, but in hard times, and how I communicate and how I treat others. And so therefore I can ask them to do the same thing because they see it, right? Even when I'm, if no one cares if you feel well, and I lead that too. According to them, they always say, Coach, you're just so consistent. And I think that's what, as they graduate and they're out, and I ask them, what are some things you remember from your experience in our program or with me, or how can I be better and all that? And then be honest, like there's no skin in the game for you anymore. And I think what I hear the most is this, that how I treat people, I'm just so consistent. And so that's when it comes from the heart.
Well, it's true. And it's easy, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easy to treat people well when things are going, as you want them to go, right? When things are going well, when you're on a winning streak, it's, when everything's working out, it's easy to treat people well. I think it's incredibly difficult for most, right, to stay consistent when things aren't going well and the adversity starts to pile. You've got that you want to treat the media the same way after a big win as you do after a big loss, I think is what you're saying there. And that's leading by example.
Yeah. Otherwise you just don't, it's actually not authentically about caring. Right. So for me, whether it's a win or loss or media having to ask hard questions after a win or loss, or you lose a recruit and the recruit tells you they're going somewhere else, how you treat them in that moment is genuinely how you care, right? And so I've been really lucky that I'm in the profession of people, because I really find people interesting and I feel that I find them powerful. And so I meet my interactions with authentic respect, and that remains consistent for me.
So what are you looking for on the recruiting trail? Obviously, they have to be a talented basketball player.
Yeah.
But what are you looking for outside of the on-court potential?
Yeah, I think you're always trying to construct a team, right? You don't need 12 alphas. You don't need 12 who are afraid of failure. You need people that all kind of fit the mold differently. And so, basketball is a fluid game. You play both ends equally. You play offense and you play defense. You can be big and small. You can be rich and poor. You can be black and white. You can be any number of things. You can be from the West Coast or the East Coast. It's a very diverse sport. And so for me, it's about putting people together. It's not just about, so that's also positionally. So if you think about their skill set on the floor, but it's also their intangible, how people are made up and what they're naturally inclined to. I really piece that together so that we have a robust, diverse group.
How do you go about making sure that you have a group of individuals that care more about the team's success than their own success? How does that work?
Honestly, you have to show them what's in it for them. I think we come into the world alone and we leave the world alone. And so not losing sight of that individuality and that people are looking through their own eyes. So the reality is what they see and what they live, even if it's not the reality, that's what you live and what you see. So I think you have to really educate and show and celebrate and critique what's in it for them. Right. And so if you look at the best teams in the country, the best players always are coming from the best teams, right? And so, that's an easy way to say you make sure they understand what's in it for them, and not just assume that people are born understanding the value of team. I don't think that's true, right? We aren't born, unless you're a twin, which I actually have. You come in the world alone and you leave the world alone. So you got to find a way to make sure they understand what's in it for them.
How do you go about your goal setting process? Like I talked to Big Ten football coach of the year, Tom Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he said, Andrew, I've got a very archaic system to my goal setting. At the, every twice a year, I pull out these binders. I show every single player what their goals were. The last time we met, we review if their goals have changed. We update their goals, and then we continue on in that process. Mm-hmm. And I meet with every single one of them multiple times per year. And a lot of them, you'll see their goals will change, and some their goals will stay incredibly consistent. How do you go about, incorporating obviously the team goals, but then doing that individual goal setting with each individual player?
Yeah. We do them all at the same time, right? So I'll start the very beginning of the year, I'll ask them to come up with their goals, their individual basketball goal, their individual campus goal, their team goals, right? And so these are multi-layered, talented humans, right? And so therefore they've got to be able to understand and value the goals that they have, and it has to be more than one. I ask them what I can count on them for every day, right? No matter what's going well or not, what can it be? Is it giving your best? Is it using your voice? Is it being honest? Whatever those things are, and you sort of say goal setting starts with speaking in truths. So let's start with what you're going to do, right? And then goals are reaching. So we've got to trust me on it. So let's put it out there, and then we'll work towards getting there. But individual goals, I always say you want to make sure on a team sport that you're not letting the parts get lost in the whole, right? And that if you're only coaching to the whole, then people can fall into their roles, and then their learning curves are going to flatten. So I actually coach an individual sport where I try to get them to play together, is what I try to say, right? And so I just want to make sure that all of my guys are on an upward trajectory. And so I'm very attuned to what their goals are and the steps they're taking to meet them on and off the court, and then also recognizing the influence that has on our team goals.
How are you going about helping them with the campus goals, right? Because that makes them well-rounded, and that makes them a good servant of the community.
That's what it is. Yeah, it helps you understand their sense of gratitude of place, right? And so freshmen are so adorable. They don't know what that means. And I say that's exactly what the point of this is, right? Is that you want to know, you want 5 professors to know your name at the end of your first year, like know you as you. Do you want to attend other people in their zone of influence? So is that other sporting events or improv groups or comedy shows on campus? Is that you want to have a certain amount of peer group that's not athletic based? Do you want whatever those campus goals are, right? It's recognizing that, that it values your place if you understand that you're about more than one thing, right? You don't come to Carolina because you have one goal. You want to grow, and growth takes a lot of different layers to it. So yeah, I kind of help them think through what those are. And then those are as important. If you put words to, you want to put dreams to words, and you want to put actions to words, and so it's writing it down, and then it's actionables.
It's interesting. So many can learn from what you just said there, because so often you talk to companies, CEOs, they set goals, and it's a financial metric. We're going to grow the company this much. We're going to do this. This employee is going to get this certification. This is what we're going to do. But you focus on that well-rounded piece.
Yeah, I think you learn a lot about yourself, right? So if I have to know, if I have to get 5 professors to know my name, I have to engage differently than just existing, right? If I put on paper that I'm going to attend other people in their zone of genius, whether that's, again, athletically or in the art space or whatnot, then you're recognizing, you're seeing the talent that's around you. That should be an empowering thing, right? And so I think I always say that success is about engagement. So how engaged are you to the process of your growth, right? And that's on and off the court. That's what growth is, right? As well as, your ability to, there's an element of grit, obviously, and that's not always a born skill. We got to teach you what that looks like, and how uncomfortable, that can feel. But, I think that if you care about someone, you care about them for who they are, not just what they do. And what these guys do is, my guys can really play basketball, but that's not who they are. It's just what they can do. My job is to make them better as people. And I genuinely mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, it pours through you, Coach. There's no question about that. You talked about grit there, and it's not something that you're born with. It's something that you learn. I ask Olympians and elite coaches and pro athletes that question all the time. Mm-hmm. Are you born with hard work, or is it something, or the ability to work hard and kind of navigate adversity, or is it something that you learn? You said that grit is something that you can develop and build over time. And you mentioned the key is almost putting them into uncomfortable situations, I think you said. Is that, expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we naturally want to run from adversity because it's uncomfortable, right? Like I said to start, it's fear of failure. Adversity, you could get knocked down. And so once you learn that adversity actually helps you get to success, because you learn that adversity is right on the other side of adversity is growth, right? So once you're not afraid of adversity, you start meeting things head on, you start growing at a faster rate. And sometimes we all need people in our corners. We need people to say it's going to be all right. Right. And so for some that I've coached, they've either already learned it or they were born with it. I don't know. It's irrelevant. I wasn't around for it. They are incredibly gritty people, which has helped them get to where they are. Other players have to learn that. And so I have to push them through love and through honesty and truth to an area of incredible discomfort and potential failure. And then they just kind of piece that together and grow from that. But yeah, I think it's not fair in life to say that something is you either have it or you don't. Then why are we living, right? So are you a leader because you were born that way? Then what's the point of living if that's how you were born, right? And so that same thing with grit. So it's a learned skill a lot of the time. I think some are more inclined to it earlier in their development. But my job is that when my guys are finished with me, they're much more gritty than they were when they got here.
How do you measure that?
How do they measure it, right? As long as they're more willing to take on additional opportunities for growth, right? If they're willing to speak up in a board meeting, if they're willing to ask for a promotion, if they're willing to take a risk because it's a different chapter in their life, once they leave me, then they've increased their grit, right? And so, you measure it. You can measure everything in our sport is measured through data, whether wins and losses and statistics. that's what they do, not who they are. I think as long as they continue to take on opportunities and engage and communicate in truth, they've increased their grit.
Some of this is art, some of it's science. When do you know, how do you know that you've pushed someone too far outside their comfort zone? That you have to tell or maybe they've pushed themselves too far outside their comfort zone. You have to pull them back a little bit.
I don't know if there is such a thing. That's an interesting question. I don't know if there is such a thing. There were times when I was here, kind of getting here originally at Carolina, and it was hard, right? There was a reason, as I always say, there was a reason the job was open, right? It needed a regroup, and it was really hard. And I just kind of looked at myself a lot and said, what's the other option? Like, there's no other option than just to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward and trust your heart and trust your work. And so I don't know if there is such a thing. I mean, I think if my guys aren't growing, then I'm not reaching them, whether that's I'm pushing them too hard or not pushing them hard enough. And that's when I always say I'm always a point inward. I never assume anybody else's fault but my own. And that's maybe to a fault, right? And so people's growth curve keeps me up at night. You know, are people getting better? Are they getting stronger? Are they getting grittier? Are they getting more? Are they getting, more honest? Are they getting more courageous? Those are things that matter to me. So I don't think there is such a thing as pushing them too far. I think if I'm not reaching them, I've got to regroup and find other ways to do it.
There is no question, Coach. I mean, coaching and people and authenticity is pouring out of you. When I'm curious, before we wrap up, I mean, did you always know that you wanted to be a coach?
No,
This
is a great story. So as you just said, I majored in neuroscience in college. I had soccer scholarships to play in the ACC. And I remember sitting with my dad one night and said, gosh, which one do you think I should go to? And he said, you're getting it all wrong, kid. It's what school, what degree is going to give you the best chance to succeed, because sports are not a vocation. So the head coach at Dartmouth at the time on soccer, he was named Steve Swanson. He's now the head coach at Virginia. He took the job at Stanford. And so he asked me if I wanted to go to Stanford with him or if I wanted to continue on as Dartmouth's recruit for soccer. And I said, I'm going to call the basketball coach. I've always loved hoop more. I was probably a better soccer player. And so luckily, the basketball coach said, come on. And sort of the rest is history. But no, I didn't think sports were a vocation. That's not kind of the family I grew up in. And sports have really changed. The business side of sports have really grown in the last 20 years. And so it's not only a vocation, it's the only vocation I've ever had. So I have found my calling in terms of the development of other people. Basically, I get to pour into the lives of others. That can be really lonely at times, which is a unique thing to say because it's such a people business. But when people aren't evolving and growing, that's a lonely feeling for me. And so I'm driven by the standard that this age group holds you to, right? This is an age group that holds you to an unattainable standard. They absolutely expect perfection from you. You better not say the wrong thing. You better not make the wrong decision, right? And I'm really inspired by that, to hold myself to kind of the unattainable standard of excellence in their eyes and make sure that their excellence is growing, in which case I'm doing the right thing. So making an impact, leaving a legacy, for me, that equals sports are a vocation.
Well, great leaders and the tarp pullers, as I like to say, do not shy away from high standards and big and bold expectations. You are no different. What an amazing story. And I feel like you're just writing, the first couple chapters of your book, Courtney. So I can't wait to see, what happens with the North Carolina basketball program and how you continue to it's only a matter of how many banners you're going to hang up there.
Well, here we go.
We'll see.
We'll see. I promise you I will make a lot of lives better in my journey. We'll see on the banners, but there'll be a lot of people that will be a better member of our society because of their role with me. I can promise you that.
There is no question. And one of the greatest lessons I've learned from talking to so many elite coaches at the college level in particular is how little of it actually has to do with X's and O's. And there's so much more to leading these young student athletes and so much more that folks like you are thinking about every single day. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for pulling the tarp, and we'll have to catch up again sometime. Take care.
I would really love it. Thanks for what you're doing too. I look forward to following you.